Welcome to another edition of the Bridges Bulletin. Let's get started. Hello, this is Dyann Bridges, and today I want to discuss fault. Finding fault with yourself and with others in the context of a relationship. Because I know a lot of you men out there are very hard on yourselves, and you can be hard on the women around you. And so I just want to give you some relief. Fault is a tough thing. It's understandable. Many people are very, very hard on themselves. And I want to give you an example from one of my clients. He's in his 60s. He's very successful. He's done well for himself. And he's in the middle of a divorce after more than 30 years, I guess, being together. And like many of you out there, I think it's a similar story in the sense that they just really weren't that compatible. And especially the older they got, the more they grew apart. And from what I've seen and read statistically, this is the biggest reason why marriages disintegrate, is because two people are not compatible. It's a shame, but it is a fact. For example, when two people are getting married, usually what happens is they are within a certain age range, say between 25 and 35. And that's the window where most people, both men and women, want to create a family. A lot of times people are dating somebody during that time in their life, and they think, well, I love this person, this is a good person, and it's about time that I got married. I don't want to wait too much longer. But there's something in the back of your mind where you know it's not 100%. And then, 10 years down the road, after a couple of kids, that 20% that wasn't working before has now become the 80%. And nobody's really very happy. But just know that most marriages fall into this category of incompatibility. And it's completely understandable because you don't want to start a family too late or too early. So it makes sense. Now, if you find yourself in a place where you feel like you really do need to break up the marriage and get a divorce, then finding fault is not going to be helpful. And I'm speaking specifically of men who really tried, men who are not abusive, and women who are not abusive. I don't think anyone should stay in a marriage where you're getting verbally excoriated or physically hit every day. That's ridiculous. But if you're both good, decent people that just don't get along very well, if you're 50 and you're healthy, that's a long time to stay with somebody that you don't really get along with. There's a lot of life left at 50, as there should be. So finding fault is not productive on any level, not logically, mentally, emotionally, or even spiritually. I think maybe thinking of it in a way where you take responsibility for what you did or did not do during the marriage, how you contributed to the breakdown, and as she needs to do that, whatever she needs to own, let her own it. It's not yours to take on. Don't take on any more responsibility than you need to. Be honest when you say you could have handled things better, you could have made better decisions, your behavior could have been better in some ways. All of this is fair, and it's not fault or blaming. And the same can be said of her. On a spiritual level, I think our divine creator does not want us to get so down on ourselves and blame ourselves. But I do think responsibility is key, because we all have free will. So you both chose to get into this union, and you stayed for many reasons. And if it's time to leave, it's time to leave. And it's an experience that you wouldn't have had otherwise. There's people who get to 50 and they've never been married. They've never been engaged. They've never had children. That's a very different life at 50 than if you have done all those things. So be honest with yourself. Would you really have made a different decision during that time between 25 and 35? And was it really so awful with this person? I can honestly say that this client who is getting divorced in his 60s, I think he can readily admit that his wife was a wonderful mother to their children. And they're now grown and they're happy and healthy and great looking and contributing members of society. They both must have done a great job parenting. And he was able to build up a fantastic career because she was more willing to stay home. She wasn't as interested in having a career. So she was a very available mother for her kids. And that's a fantastic thing. A human being always does better with a mother around them in their early years. So if you can look back and maybe think of some of the conversations as well, how she influenced your thinking positively, and how that influenced maybe your career or the hobbies you engaged in or the friends you hung around with, how it got into your thinking, the good ways, not the bad ways. You can own that experience as well as a positive thing. You chose this woman to come into your life, and she did, in many ways, indelibly change you positively. And yes, there were rotten things too. And so, no need for fault or blame, just ownership and responsibility. And then that way you can shed any guilt or shame you feel from your actions during the marriage. I've talked about guilt and shame before, and I won't go into it now, but it is one of the only emotion that turns inward. Guilt and shame, they're flip sides of the same coin. And they always turn inward. You can never use that energy for anything positive. If you can stand back and look at all the great things that came of your marriage and your union, your long-term relationship with a wonderful woman, then you can gain a lot more from it. So if you want to know more, please visit relatorsmanual.com. This is Dyann Bridges. I'm a coach confidant for men, and I'd love to talk to you if you need a little help with a situation or an ongoing strategy for your life, your relationship, and starting over after 50. I can definitely help you there. So thank you very much for listening, and have a very sensual day.